Mets lose 4 in a row thanks to an extra inning loss, a heartbreaker down in Atlanta in game 1 of the series in extra innings. And in this video, we are briefly talking about one glaring issue with this Mets team that David Stearns needs to fix, and he needs to fix it quickly. Let's get into it. All right, Mets fans, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the True Mets Talk podcast. It's your boy CP. The New York Mets drop a game 4-3 in game 1 of the series against the Atlanta Braves, who have been struggling all season long. And the Mets looked like they were in the driver's seat for most of the game up until the 8th inning. We'll talk about it very briefly and get into the one issue for me that is the biggest issue with this team right now with the way things are going over the last 4 games. Before we get into it, please do smash those thumbs up buttons on this video, subscribe to the channel, and Mets fans, it's okay. It's a safe space. Vent out your frustrations in the comment section down below, and let's have a discussion. The New York Mets were in the driver's seat in this game thanks to a beautiful performance by David Peterson, but some would argue that Carlos Mendoza made the wrong decision going with him in the 8th inning, especially after the first guy got on in that inning. David Peterson lets up the first 2 runners. Reed Garrett comes into the game in a pretty tough situation, but is able to get 2 outs immediately. And then a 2-2 pitch to Marcell Ozuna is lined down the line for the game tying runs. It was a game tying double for Marcell Ozuna. And a lot of other things went wrong in this game from that point forward to help the Mets and help the Braves, I should say, beat the Mets in extra innings. You could talk about the lack of production from the lineup in the top of the 10th. You can talk about Francisco Alvarez's blunder in the bottom of the 10th by throwing behind the runner. I believe it was Luke Williams at the time, and he takes third base to set up a situation that was very dangerous for Huascar Brazaban. That was the wrong play 10 times out of 10. And I know that Carlos Mendoza kind of beat around the bush in the post game when asked about that situation. Of course, Mendoza is not going to throw his player under the bus, especially if this young player in Francisco Alvarez has been struggling like he has been immensely, right, for quite some time now. So a very infuriating loss. The offense, I mean, they got things going early. They kind of took their foot off the pedals, which Rob and I have talked about for quite some time now. When you get out to a lead, especially against the Atlanta Braves, you don't want to hand them free at bats. You want to hand them free outs, like Juan Soto was doing on the base paths, like Pete Alonso did on his double, trying to extend into an extra base hit and gets thrown out of second base. You don't want to hand a team like that extra outs and hand them free outs defensively, right? And that's exactly what the Mets did in this game, and it came back to haunt them. And you can pinpoint maybe a couple of different turning points in this game, but I think that especially given the situation going into extra innings, this was the most glaring situation that I was watching out for in this game. And it was how the bottom of the lineup was going to produce with that ghost runner on second base. A lineup that, all in all, has struggled so far this season. They've been better as of late, much better as of late with runners in scoring position, but still a lot of work left to do from top to bottom. But when I talk about offensive production, I'm looking at the bottom of the lineup and wondering where that production is, especially when you have these 2 names in the lineup in the same game at the same time. I also want to point out that Jared Young, I don't think Jared Young should have been in that situation in the top of the 10th inning as he struck out virtually on 3 pitches against Raisel Iglesias. He looked horrible, didn't even move the runner over. Starling Marte was on your bench. I understand that you prioritize lefty-righty matchups, righty-lefty, etc., vice versa, but that is not a situation for Jared Young to stay in the game, going 0 for 3 up until that point in the game as well. But the last 15 days of production, when are the Mets going to get production from the bottom of the lineup outside of Tyrone Taylor? Because there is no team right now, no matter who the Mets are playing, that fears the bottom half of the lineup outside of Tyrone Taylor, who had himself a hell of a game, a home run, 3 RBIs against the Atlanta Braves in game one in that 4-3 loss that we just talked about. But this is the last 15 days, the outlook of the production that the Mets are getting from the two young guys in Francisco Alvarez and Ronnie Mauricio. And I'm not even talking about Francisco Alvarez's defensive struggles, which a lot of people are in this fan base are kind of mentioning to bring in Luis Torrens and make him the starting catcher and even send down Francisco Alvarez to AAA to try to get his head right, both offensively and defensively, which I think it's not out of the question at this point. But we're talking strict offensive numbers here. Last 15 days, 30 plus at bats for each of these players. And you can see the respective numbers. They are not good. And this type of production in such a critical, crucial month for the New York Mets is not acceptable. A month that has perpetually plagued this organization for as many years as this fan base can remember is not off to a good start here, right? In the middle of June, especially over the last 4 games. Now, it's a 4-game stretch. It's a 4-game sample size. Teams will have these stretches over the course of a 162-game season. I understand that. But right now, you're in a situation where you gave up 3 games of a lead after being swept by the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Phillies did their jobs and they came back and now they're within 2 games of the division. Okay, the Phillies lost last night. No harm, no foul. But you do not want to let a team like the Atlanta Braves that have been dealing with injuries ever since last season, really, which helped the Mets get into the playoffs and make that run. They hang around. They cut division leads. I know they're 12 games back right now, but you don't want to give them any extra life. You don't want to give them any extra life in game like the Mets did yesterday, and we see how that ended up, but also in the season for them to come back and cut into that division lead because these are winnable games. These are winnable games. The Mets could have taken at least 1 game against the Tampa Bay Rays as well, and there were so many opportunities, even given the fantastic Mets record so far this season. They've given away so many games by simple mistakes, both pitching wise, defense, and offense. It's been a plethora of issues all around the diamond. But I will say offensively, they could have a lot better record. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. I understand that if they just hit with runners in scoring position. And you just knew, top of the 10th inning, Jared Young coming up to the plate, Francisco Alvarez, Ronnie Mauricio, what's going to happen? Free runner on second base. You need at least 1, preferably 2, with the way that extra innings are set up right now with the current rules. And you get a big, fat 0 of production. Strikeouts by Francisco Alvarez and Jared Young and Ronnie Mauricio popping up to end the inning. It's unacceptable. A 594 OPS and a 630 OPS, respectively, from these 2 players over the last 15 days. These stats are thanks to ESPN and the individual splits, but also the lack of power production from 2 guys that are known for their power, and Francisco Alvarez and Ronnie Mauricio. 3 home runs combined in the last 68 at-bats for each of these players. It has not been good. And the strikeouts are the biggest thing as well, right? We always prioritize power, but when you're striking out at such a high clip, like these 2 players are right now, Ronnie Mauricio, 13 strikeouts in his last 38 at-bats. He is looking absolutely foolish on off-speed pitches. This is a big problem. And Tyrone Taylor is going to need some help down there in the bottom of the lineup because these teams have no incentive to, maybe even in crucial situations, maybe 1 out, 2 outs in the later stages of the game, throw Tyrone Taylor anything and just get to Francisco Alvarez to get the much needed out, or Ronnie Mauricio, same thing. So I think that it's getting to a point where we're going to have a conversation where you can't have these 2 guys in the same lineup on the same day, but also talking about one of these guys going down, if not both of these players going down at some point. And I know that Francisco Alvarez is meant to be on this team for the long term. I understand that, but he needs to get his head right offensively and defensively. I think that AAA would be such a good thing, and the Mets can prioritize defense for the time being with Luis Torrens and Hayden Sanger. So that's what I wanted to talk about, is the bottom of the lineup. The Mets have some issues in the bullpen. I understand that. I get it. Reed Garrett, the sign got switched. He wanted a fastball. Francisco Alvarez wanted him to throw the splitter. The splitter's what got hit. But I think the bullpen's going to be okay. But the bottom of the lineup, this team has had a weighted lineup, an uneven lineup, a top-heavy lineup, I should say. I'm struggling to find the term here. This is how upset I am right now, for quite some time. They need to even things out. And I think that Jeff McNeil could also be a player that evens things out for this lineup, but you just cannot have two automatic outs in the same lineup at the same time at the bottom of the order with these two guys. Mark Vientos is coming back. Hopefully that helps, but let's not act like Mark Vientos, before he got hurt, was hitting the ball extremely well up until that point in the season, because he hasn't been. There's a lot of guys on this team that are not producing up to expectations to the back of their baseball cards. And I guess it's a good thing and a bad thing. The bad thing is that, well, we've lost games because of it, but the good thing is, like, maybe things turn around, and hopefully soon, heading into the All-Star stretch. So game 2 tonight, the Mets have already put themselves at a disadvantage in this series by squandering a winnable game. And game 2 doesn't get any easier, because the pitching matchup definitely favors the Atlanta Braves. Paul Blackburn is on the mound for the Mets. We know how his last outing went, versus Chris Sale, reigning Cy Young winner with a 2.79 ERA going into tonight. So Mets fans, let me know how you're feeling. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to vent. This whole video was me venting. Let's get back in the win column. Let's do it. Even up the series tonight somehow, some way. The pitching matchups are as such. The Mets did a good job against Schwellenbach. Tonight is Chris Sale. Tomorrow's going to be Spencer Strider. 2 or 3 incredibly talented pitchers on that staff. Kodai Senga went down. Frankie Montas doesn't really look great in his rehab starts, but they're talking about, because of the, I guess, desperation factor, let's say, Frankie Montas making an appearance if his last AAA start goes well. They're hoping for that. Some issues that David Stearns is dealing with here in June. None of these issues are insurmountable. I want to make that completely clear. None of these issues are insurmountable for the New York Mets, but there are issues to be addressed, especially as we get closer and closer to the trade deadline. We already saw a NL team in the San Francisco Giants be proactive in making their lineup better. Top of the lineup better, but that means guys get moved down to make the bottom and the middle of the lineup better over there in San Francisco, getting Rafi Devers. I'm not saying the Mets have to swing for the fences and get that type of player this early on. And I'm not saying they have to make a trade this early on, but a bat is necessary at the deadline, given the current personnel and given the current production statuses. So let's go Mets. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Spam those thumbs up buttons, and we'll see how game 2 turns out. Let's go Mets. Peace.